the New World Order, and the conspiracy to cover it up, the shadow government's agenda in keeping us asleep, the injustice, catastrophe, and the global chaos are all indications that we are living in a period of time known as the end of days. Are you looking for answers? They are out there, and together we will find them as we navigate through End Times Now with Bree.
How's it going, guys? Welcome to another episode of End Times Now with Bree. I'm Bree. Here, the topic of conversation that I have between me, myself, this microphone, and your ears is the end times. So, that being said, welcome to the end times. We are in it. First, I'd like to thank all the listeners out there who are sending me feedback. I'm getting a ton of encouragement, and many have offered prayers, which is something that in this time we really need. I think we should all be praying for each other, and you guys know who you are, so thank you very much for that. I really feel like it's the best way to push the needle for God's kingdom, just saying, so thank you. Also, I have gotten some emails from others out there who are asking me questions. I love it. Thank you. I'm honored that you're asking me these questions. Some of you are asking me for prayer, and I am happy to do that. I have quite a few prayer warriors out there who are more than willing to pray, and I'm willing to pass those things along. So don't you worry, I see you. Also, I'd really like to get some people on here who have something to say. I'm looking for people with some cool stories, some testimonies, even a good debate. Don't be shy, reach out because I'm game, okay? I do have a couple of people who I'm getting ready to line up, and so that should be coming out in the next couple of weeks, especially when we're moving. That's going to be good. It's going to help us out, so that way my research can kind of rest for a little while, and I can just pay attention to what God's doing in some people's lives, and maybe, hopefully, you guys can get something out of that too. So make sure you go and subscribe to all the channels, all the platforms. I'll make sure and put all the links in the descriptions for you guys, and share it, because that's the only way that we're going to be able to get this message out, right? So, hit the bell, do the dance, all that jazz. And then, of course, you can always email me or message me. You can message me on Facebook, and you can email me at endtimesnowwithbree@protonmail.com. And okay, so also, if you're not already listening in order, I highly recommend that you do that, because if you don't, you're going to miss a lot of what I feel to be really significant and pertinent information. And I really believe that it will help you understand each consecutive episode. So if you're popping in on this one, go back and start from the beginning. Honestly, because I just feel like the way that everything has been put together and the way that God has led me down this road, you're going to be able to understand a lot more, as you go along, if you start from the beginning as things move forward. So, because this is kind of like telling a really long story, and it applies to all of our lives, and it'll make sense of everything if we just take it one step at a time. Also, if you're listening to these messages and you're sharing these messages, that's the most important thing. But downloading the Spreaker app to listen to these episodes really helps us out, because they're the ones that put us out there on all the platforms. And so by using them, it gives us a pretty solid boost. So that's all I have to say about that. So thanks again for all of you guys who are listening and supporting. We really appreciate it. And so now, without further ado, here we go. First off, I'm going to put a link to my buddy John in the description. He talks about grave robbing, and he shares some of his story, which was both heartbreaking and heart inspiring. Okay. But I think it's a message that people need to hear. So I'm going to go ahead and throw that in the description. Make sure you go over and you check it out. It's short, but it's definitely pertinent. And then also I want to quickly add that I started a Telegram channel. And I'm going to do my best to keep you guys up to date there with things that are going on in Israel, as well as important updates around the world, so on and so forth. And it is at End Times Now with Bree. So I will also include that link as well. But just go download the app. It's one of the only places left that won't get censored for the truth. And that also being said, we need to be sure to pray for discernment, because I have seen some crazy stuff on there that is way off base, much like everywhere else and every other platform. But I'd rather have the option of discerning through it than being fed a lie or not getting the information at all. So just be picky. That's all I'm saying. Okay, so I released this episode with Chad and Sheri, and some weird stuff happened, such as my life, but that's okay. I get good stories out of it, But, I should also know better than to say two things. Number one, I will never say that I'll never move again, because, obviously, we've seen how that works out, right? And then the other thing is that I'll never say that I'll have that episode out in such and such time, because no, I will not be doing that anymore. This episode, I'm not kidding when I tell you that I have been every waking minute since Thursday morning on this. Yeah. And actually today we got invited. I didn't even check my phone or anything. And today we got invited to a friend's house to go eat. And Eric took a picture of me. He took a picture of me. And the look on my face, I'm doing research to, wrap up this episode and get it ready to launch for you guys and put it out there. And holy cannoli, like I look mad. I look mad. But nevertheless, I didn't even check it. I felt bad afterwards, but he was like, no, Bree's doing this podcast. And so, I had to miss out on fried zucchini and what'd she make? Gyros, which gladly, okay, even though I love that stuff, actually, just to let you guys know, if you've listened to my other episode, you'll know that I'm from Michigan, and the Lions are playing right now, and this is like something that hasn't happened in 30 years right now happening, but you know what? This is more important to me. So, that's how big it is, in my opinion. And so anyway, today's episode is part 3 of the 10 Kings prophecy that we started on Chad and Sheri's podcast on Investigate Earth. If you're here, then you've probably already heard part 2. If you don't know who Chad and Sheri are, go to their podcast, Investigate Earth Conspiracy Podcast, on Spreaker or Spotify or wherever it is that you want to listen to it, and you will get part 1 there. But today, this is part 3, and we are playing a game called Who's That Whore? Fun, right? Isn't that fun? And for all of my 80s people who knew the song by Madonna, who, by the way, I feel like she will be mummified one day. Yeah, I said it. But I couldn't think of that question without singing it. Like, who's that whore? Right? Okay, get it? Anyway, so for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, Madonna, before she was a mummy, made a song called Who's That Girl? And yeah, don't waste your time going to listen to it. You know what? Go listen to Nails on a Chalkboard instead. because, yeah. Anyway, we talked about the 10 Kings prophecy and how and why I believe that it's been fulfilled. I'd also like to add that we need to remember to look at the skies as we keep our eyes on Israel, because ultimately they go hand in hand. Usually when something happens in the heavens, it's not long after that Israel has something big happen. And this goes for UFO sightings as well, but I won't go into that here. Anyway, we spoke on the 10 Kings of Revelation 17, and we're going to continue to bounce back to that. But basically, that led me to Zechariah 5, where once again, we see that all of this is relative. Surprise, surprise. Which the relativity of it all is even stranger, because if you listened to that episode with Chad and Sheri, the last one, you'll hear Sheri say that all these books weren't written in sequential order, and she's right. However, what we begin to see is that they oftentimes, even though they were written at different time periods and in different styles, they're talking about the same things. And you're going to see that today. Real quick, I wanted to touch on something that'll come up later, so just hang on to this. In Revelation 17, chapter 17, verse 5, it talks about Mystery Babylon, yada, yada. Well, real quick, I wanted to break some things down here in Greek. So I am going to read Revelation chapter 17, verses 1 through 13. And just kind of like listen, but I'm going to come back to it later on. I just want to refresh your memory here. And there came one of 7 angels, which had the 7 vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, I can't talk. I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So he carried me away in spirit to the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand, full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. That part always kind of freaks me out a little bit. Like, why is he admiring her? But anyway, and the angel said unto me, Wherefore didst thou marvel? I will tell thee the mystery of the woman and the beast that carrieth her, which hath the 7 heads and the 10 horns. The beast that you saw was, and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit, and go into perdition. And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was, and is not, and yet is. And here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth. And there are 7 kings, 5 are fallen, 1 is, and the other is not yet come. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space. And the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th, and is of the 7, and goeth into perdition. And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. These have one mind, and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. Okay, so what do we have here? All right. Well, we have a mystery, and her name is Confusion. That's what Babylon actually means. In Greek, in Hebrew, it means confusion. And it's also allegorically Rome, which is the enemy of the true followers of Jesus. And this is in the Strong's Dictionary, you guys. This isn't something that I'm just making up here, okay? So we have mystery, who is named Confusion and is also allegorically Rome, who is the enemy of true followers of Jesus and also happens to be a mother, whether she's a motherland or in a maternal sense. In my opinion, it's actually both. But she's steeped in sexual immorality and idolatry. And she is the it girl for the whole earth, okay? Which in Greek, the word for earth happens to be gay, which I found interesting, not gonna lie. I kind of chuckled a bit because to me, that just was a little funny, I could see God when he's doing his language thing being like, oh, this is going to be good. And then when God is done creating earth, Jesus looks over at Michael and giggles and he's like, that's gay. But anyway, I don't mean to offend anybody out there. I'm just trying to actually shine a little light here because this is some heavy stuff. So if I offend you, I am very sorry. That is not my intent. I just found it very interesting. That would be the word. Anyway, we need to have a sense of humor here, guys. That's all I'm saying, because we're about to talk about the end of the world here. Okay? All right. So let's not forget that original meaning meant happy. Just saying. Hang on to that though, because just do it. You're going to need it later. So where we left off was when Chad and Sheri and I were on our last episode, I read Zechariah 5, and then I had to stop the episode because, as I said at the end of the last episode, I realized I was wrong regarding something, and it was quite significant, and I may have accidentally stumbled onto something else that, if it's true, will hopefully maybe teach you some things or maybe blow your mind as much as it blew my mind. The moral here is that this is a really good example of why it's so important to go back to the original language. Okay. And also, if you haven't heard me say it before, blueletterbible.org, they have a great program. They have, there's commentaries there. There's a whole bunch of stuff there, and you can go into the tools and the interlinear, and it'll give you the original language, and you can really do deep dives there. But it's amazing the stuff that you'll come up with. So, all right. So Zechariah is said to be one of the most prophetic books in the Bible. And in my opinion, it's right up there with Isaiah. In particular, Zechariah 5, which is where I had left off before, that begins with the judgments, okay? But the previous 4 have to do with the spiritual cleansing of Israel, enlarging and blessing Israel. And in all reality, we should have probably started there. However, for the sake of the 10 kings and what I believe what we're witnessing currently, we're just going to start at chapter 5, because things are happening quite rapidly, and I feel like this is really important. However, I highly recommend that you go read 1 through 4 on your own. So, when we read Zechariah 5 and Revelation 5, it actually confirms it and actually speaks of the root of David. And interestingly, Zechariah 6 goes on to the branch, which I'll get into probably in another episode, but they coincide quite nicely, I think, because the root of David is actually the branch, and that's a whole nother thing, but it's really cool. So I will probably include that in the next episode that is going to round this whole series out for everybody. So let's start out with this. Okay, Zechariah 5, verses 1 and 2. Then I turned and lifted up mine eyes and looked, and behold, a flying roll. And he said unto me, What seest thou? And I answered, I see a flying roll. The length thereof is 20 cubits, and the breadth thereof is 10 cubits. Now, when we read this and we go back to the Hebrew on the word roll, it's Megillah, and it means that it's something that is written. We also are told how big it is. Okay, it's 20 by 10, which is roughly 30 feet by 15 feet. And we also know that it's flying. Okay, so here we have a written, quote unquote, roll, which is probably a scroll. If you're looking at a different version of the Bible, then it probably says scroll. But back in those days in Zechariah, that's what they would have used, was a scroll. The codex, which is something that's written and like bound, like a notebook, didn't come out until like the 3rd century. So it's big. It's very big. However, it also just so happens to have the same measurements of the temple, Holy of Holies, which is the innermost part of the tabernacle. Okay, and that is 10 by 20 cubits. But here's the thing to remember. And Zechariah, actually, he would have known this. He would have probably that probably would have sparked a light bulb, 10 by 20 cubits, because of a couple things. It was Solomon's porch, and then also because of the Holy of Holies. And so we have to remember that this is the only place in which one person can go into it. Okay, it would have been the high priest, and it would have been here that one would have not only had to go through all kinds of rituals in order to even go in, but it would have been here that this one priest would have asked for atonement for literally everyone. And if it was done on the wrong day, or the priest was not clean, or whatever, he would actually die. So, and it would be once a year that they would do this. And so here's a little side note. There came about a tradition, both in Jewish and in Christian culture, I've heard this several times, that the priests would tie ropes around the waist or the ankles of the high priests that would go in for the atonement in case the priest would die while on duty for whatever reason. They could like pull him out because remember, only one person was allowed to go in. And they also wore bells around the hems of their garments so that others could hear that they were still, up and at them and not lying on the floor, not breathing. So I'm not really sure where this tradition came from. And in all reality, I have not found anything in the Bible or any other sources outside of the Bible that can corroborate this. However, I can see how it would have become a concern, seeing as even the priests started practicing idol worship, but I also know that God is smart, and if he were going to take someone out, he probably would do it after Elvis has left the building. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, moving on here. So, all right. So we've got this flying scroll, it's tangible. And we know that it's tangible because it has dimensions that actually match the Holy of Holies. So it's got dimensions. It's three-dimensional. And so what does that indicate? I'm inclined to think that based on the Hebrew, that this is a holy law. Okay. And when we read on, we see that it not only has two sides to it, but it seems to like take action in the form of judgment. Okay. And it flies, remember. So then we go on to Zechariah 5:3. Then said he unto me, this is the curse that goeth forth over the face of the whole earth. For everyone that stealeth shall be cut off on this side according to it. There's one side of the scroll. And then everyone that sweareth shall be cut off on that side according to it. And there's the other side. Okay, so we know that it's double-sided. The word curse in Hebrew also means oath. It means oath of covenant. It means a curse from God, i.e. God's judgment. And so now let me go to Revelation chapter 5, where we can confirm what Zechariah 5 is saying, where this scroll is written on both sides. Okay, so now this scroll in Revelation 5 is the scroll with the 7 seals. Okay, and I feel like this is really important because it's going to give us somewhat of a timeline. So since we're there, check this out. The first seal starts in Revelation 6, chapters 1 and 2. I'm sorry, verses 1 and 2. And it says, and I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals, and I heard as it were the noise of thunder, and one of the 4 beasts saying, come and see. And I saw, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat on him had a bow, and a crown was given unto him. And he went forth conquering and to conquer. Okay, now, when we go to the Greek and look up the word bow, it's toxin. Well, that in and of itself, to me at least, sounded exactly like toxin, as in poison. And so I went to the etymology dictionary. Etymology is the study of where words originate. And this is what I found. It's organic poison, especially one produced by bacteria in an animal body. Bats, anyone? Anyone? No? No one wants bats? Okay. Next. Now, from toxin comes the word toxic, right? Okay. So listen to this. In the 1660s, it came from the French word toxique, and directly from late Latin toxicus, which means poisoned, from toxicum, poison, from the Greek toxicon, and remember that, okay? Remember this upcoming pharmacon, okay? Poison. And it's poison use on arrows, pertaining to arrows or archery, and thus to a bow. From toxin, there's our word, friends, which is bow, probably from a Scythian word that also was borrowed into Latin as Texas, I don't know what that means. It's Y-E-W. Watkins suggests a possible source in Iranian taxa, bow, and then as a noun from 1890, toxic waste is by 1888 in medicine, and so they refer that toxin. By 1955, it's known as chemical or radioactive waste. So, moving on. All right. Now, this dude who is sitting on on the horse, okay, he has a crown, right? So we know he's got a bow, and we've already just established what that is. And he also has a crown. Now, this in the Greek is Stephanos, which is actually a wreath, okay? But here's a tidbit for you. The word crown is also corona. I'm sure you guys have heard of that before with the whole like coronavirus, what it means, whatever, blah, blah. And this right here is why you'll hear me say to be careful when looking at things with such a singular sense, because I truly believe that this has two meanings wrapped up in one. Okay, so we're peeling this like an onion. See? Okay, and now dude is supposed to go out and conquer, right? So we know he's got a bow, he's got this wreath, this crown, and now he's supposed to go out and conquer. And so this is weird. If anyone has anything to add here, please bring it on. So the word conquer is actually nikeo, and this happens to be the same word as overcome, also prevail, victory. But the word conquer is only in this verse, Revelation chapter 6, verse 2. It's only here, at least in this particular context. And the word prevail is only in the New Testament once, along with the word victory. It's only in the New Testament once, which is very weird. The word overcome, however, is in the New Testament 24 times. 24 elders? I don't know. But I went to the root of the word, and the root word is actually victory. And in the Greek, it happens to be Nike. Now, I don't know what you want to do with all that, but there you go. You can chew on that for a little while. So here we have dude. He's on a white horse. He's wearing a wreath crown, which is most likely made from laurel bay leaves, just to let you know. And you'll see why that's important later. So just kind of hang on to that. But he's out there with his poison toxin, and he is just killing it out there. Okay? He is crushing it because he is conquering. So now, when you put all that together, that sounds exactly like the principality behind those that happen to be wearing white lab coats, right? Running around with poison syringes. And truth be told, they kind of won that round, So, but remember the crown. Okay, so we're going to come back to that, but remember, it's corona, okay? And it's also a wreath of laurel. Just remember that. And the reason why I say that is because whenever a wreath is involved, back in the day as a crown, it was made from laurel, usually. And side note, it was usually depicted as being worn by Apollo. But I digress. Next. Okay, so this is all going to come together, but we need to get this timeline down. Okay, so now we have the next seal, and the next seal is war. And it's a dude on a red horse whose rider's job is to take peace from the earth. And he also happens to don a really great sword. So first of all, the word red in Greek is pyros or pyros, which means red, but it also means to be like fire. And it makes sense, doesn't it? Like, I tend to associate war with lots of fire, but also if we go back to the 10 Kings and how it's connected to Ezekiel 38, knowing that Russia will be the leader there, they're red. Okay? So they're red. But check this out. In Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 2, this is what it says. Declare ye among the nations and publish and set up a standard. Publish and conceal it not. Say, Babylon is taken. Bel is confounded. Marduk is broken in pieces. Her idols are confounded. Her images broken in pieces. That's very interesting, which I need to stop there real quick because I need to say that Baal or Baal is the same as Marduk, okay, who is the same as Baphomet, and so on. The ancient Babylonians, etc., they made infant and child sacrifices to Marduk the same way that the Canaanites did with Baal. And if you do a study on our quote-unquote Christian traditions, you'll find, if you don't know this already, you'll find that the roots of them are like 100% pagan, okay? And it actually might even freak you out a little bit, just saying. I thought about getting into that here, but I think it needs to be a separate episode of its own because this one is pretty heavy as it is. So anyway, we're going to get back to it. All right. So verse 3 of Jeremiah 50 confirms Revelation 17, the 10 kings, guys. So this is verse 3. For out of the north there come up a nation against her, which shall make her land desolate, and none shall dwell therein. They shall remove, they shall depart, both man and beast. All that found them have devoured them. And their adversaries said, We offend not, because they have sinned against the Lord, the habitation of justice, even the Lord, the hope of their fathers. For lo, which by the way, lo in Hebrew means no. For lo, I will raise and cause them to come up against Babylon, an assembly of great nations from the north country. And they shall set themselves in array against her. From thence she shall be taken. Their arrows shall be as of a mighty expert man. None shall return in vain. So, a couple things here. We know that there's desolation, but we also know what the words here are. Remove and depart. And then, of course, there's the word devour, which is weird, but it goes hand in hand with Revelation 17. Okay, so remember, I just read Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 3, and it goes hand in hand with Revelation chapter 17, when it says that they shall eat her flesh. But what I'm saying is that even though it'll be desolate, there's still going to be life, because you can't remove or depart from a place if you're dead, right? Okay, so now that said, the whole devour thing, like, this is gross, but do some research on wars in history, and like all throughout, you'll find that dudes are hungry and provisions are scarce, which, if you ask me, goes right in line with Ezekiel 38. And remember, Psalm 83 is to wipe Israel off the map, but Ezekiel 38 is to take spoil. Got it? Okay. But then there are the arrows, okay? And they shall be of a mighty expert man, and none shall return, right? So, first of all, arrows don't return unless, of course, they are the type of arrows that are smart ones, like that of, I don't know, maybe a hypersonic, long-range precision strike kind of an arrow. Missile. So notice the phrase, their arrows, which indicates many of them. And then it says, as of a mighty expert man, which indicates one dude. So we've got a lot of arrows, but we've got a mighty expert man, almost as if it's one guy pressing one button and releasing a whole bunch of these things. I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm reading into that one a little much, but still, arrows don't return, but missiles can though, So my brain kind of exploded there, but that's not the thing that I found that made me cut off the episode, guys. Oh no, that was just a little cookie that Jesus gave me for eating my pizza. But I wanted to go over those things because I believe that it gives us a decent timeline. Also, what I'm saying here is that I believe, and again, this is just my personal opinion here, I believe that the first two seals have already been crack-a-lackled. I think that those babies are open. And remember, too, this is not the thing yet. Okay, I have to give you some more in order to tie it all in and not only make it make sense, but also help to solidify why I feel like we are where we are in the whole game. Okay, so I'm going to go back to Zechariah 5. And here we're in verses 6 and 7. And I said, what is it? And he said, this is an ephah that goeth forth. He said, moreover, this is their resemblance through all the earth. And behold, there was lifted up a talent of lead, and this a woman that sitteth in the midst of the ephah. Okay, so stick with me here, guys, because this is where the thing begins, okay? All right, so the letter, the Hebrew letter ayin is the 16th letter, and it means I. Now, I'm just going to say the only reason why I know this is because homeschooling my kids, we decided that we were going to try to learn Hebrew, and I highly recommend that if you go in and you try just looking at the it's called the Aleph Bet, but go and look at that and look at how significant the letters are, not only in like what they mean, but they each have a spelling. For instance, ayin is a letter, but it's spelled A-I-Y-N. I'm sorry, A-Y-I-N. And each one of those letters in Hebrew has a mathematical breakdown, and it's just very interesting. It also has a pictograph with it. Like, it's really just a very cool language. And one of the things that I noticed as a Christian myself is that every letter actually points to Christ. The beginning is the Aleph, and the end is a Tav, and it actually is a cross. The pictograph of the Tav is a cross. So I think it's just interesting. He says, I am the Alpha and the Omega, first and the last. Anyway, totally off topic there, but I recommend it. And so ayin also has to do with vision, of course, for bringing forth truths. And it teaches us to see beyond what's in front of us, and it also happens to relate to time, which I found interesting. But in this verse, the Hebrew word for resemblance, okay, so remember, it was, this is their resemblance through all the earth. I also found it interesting that it's there is the possessive T-H-E-I-R. So he's talking about a bunch of people, not just one woman. He's talking about a multitude. In fact, okay, so the resemblance is ayin. That is the word, the Hebrew word for resemblance. And not only does it mean I, but it also says the following. It says that it's as showing mental qualities, which is interesting. And then also of mental and spiritual faculties. which is interesting because if you read it like that, then it breaks down as this is their mental qualities through the earth, or this is their mental and spiritual faculties through the earth, and this is what is being shown. It's very interesting to me. So literally, though, we could take this in like a bazillion different directions, couldn't we? Like knowing who this woman is, and in my opinion, it's the Statue of Liberty, which is simply the symbol here of the USA, and I established that on the last episode. And the angel calls her wickedness, which is based on Revelation. She also resembles the whore of Babylon. So again, peeling the onion. And so let's ask ourselves this question here. Why does he used the word resemble? Like its meaning is so significant in the Hebrew. And so where did the Statue of Liberty actually come from? We can ask ourselves this question. She was a gift from the French Freemasons. So really? Like an eye? An eye. If you read that in Hebrew, it reads like that. This is their eye through all the earth. Okay? And if you listened to any of my other episodes, you'd know that the eye of Horus, the all-seeing eye, this is the symbol of the Illuminati, which are the high-ranking 33-degree Freemasons and are literally all of the other secret societies out there. They're all connected. But, I mean, come on. Like, I hope you're following me there. If you don't, and you have questions, please reach out to me. I'm happy to answer those questions for you. But to me, that just kind of blew me away. But also, let's understand that there's a truckload of symbolism with Miss Liberté. Okay, so like I won't get into it here, but there's sevens all over the place. They're in line with the seven mountains. Or Revelation 17 also has 7 floors within her base, with the exception of the number of pillars, which I'm willing to bet I can find a connection somewhere to one of the small G's there. But it resembles the mausoleum of Halicarnassus, and many of the mausoleums of the ancient small G's just, you know, she doesn't have as many pillars as the mausoleum of Halicarnassus. But let's not forget the double helix staircase to her crown, right? Or her corona. If you took the double helix of our DNA apart and set each strand end to end, all the DNA in our body would reach to the sun. Also, corona. And back 600 times. Just to let you know, that's 100 trillion times 6 feet divided by 92 million miles, which is how far away the sun is from Earth. Fun fact, the mausoleum of Halicarnassus happens to be, and I'm pretty sure it's totally an accident. I mean, you know, when you see it, like there's no way that anyone would ever design such a thing, right? Without a blueprint of the original, right? It's identical to the Freemasons Temple in Washington, D.C. But listen, in order to understand how significant this is, you guys, we need to understand where the idolatry against God actually began. Okay, and this helps to back up this thing even further. So, in a spiritual sense, idolatry against God started in Satan's heart, right? With pride and so on and so forth. But in a social and governmental sense, it started in Genesis 10 in the land called Shinar, which is actually Babylon. It started with the first world dictator, who was Nimrod. And guess who was married to Nimrod? Her name is Semiramis. She is also Ishtar, Inanna, Isis, Astarte, Ashtaroth, Aphrodite, and of course, Libertas, but I digress. Just remember Semiramis. And the other thing, guys, is that the list goes on and on. Like, that's just a smidgen of, they're all the same. Like, they're all the same. Eric disagrees with me on that, but, you know, I'm going to stick to my guns on that. They might differ a little bit, but like for the most part, it's like playing the game of telephone. You know what I mean? Like, you know, it starts out in Greece, it goes to Rome, whatever. It's going to change a smidge, but they're the same, you know? Anyway, so listen. So I believe that when we're talking about Babylon in the last days, I believe that we're talking about a literal Babylon as well as a symbolic and figurative Babylon, okay? And I won't do it now because it'll take us down a whole other rabbit hole. But if you read all of Isaiah 13 and 14, you will see that there will be a literal Babylon base per se, okay? And that the things that are spoken of in the latter days have not happened yet. Babylon, it hasn't happened yet. However, we have Mystery Babylon in Revelation 17, and she's part of the whole system. But she is not in the literal land of Babylon. She gets destroyed. And in fact, she completely gets her rear end totally handed to her. Okay, I hope that makes sense. But in Zechariah 5, I feel like this is a literal thing being moved to a literal Babylon. Okay, and I'll break all that down as we go. But like, I think they, quote unquote, they are going to move, this is going to sound nuts, the literal Statue of Liberty to a literal Babylon. Okay, but it's the who, the they, okay, that make me flip out about this. So I'm just going to read this again. So that way it will refresh your guys' memory. And so this is Zechariah chapter 5, verses 7 through 11. And behold, there was lifted up, remember that phrase in Hebrew is nasa, a talent, remember that means round, of lead. So, behold, there was lifted up a talent of lead, and this is a woman that sitteth in the midst of the ephah. And he said, this is wickedness. And he cast it into the midst of the ephah, and he cast the weight of lead upon the mouth thereof. Then lifted up my eyes, I looked, and behold, there came out two women, and the wind was in their wings, for they had wings like the wings of a stork, and they lifted up, NASA, the ephah between the earth and the heaven. Then said I to the angel that talked with me, whither do these bear the ephah? And he said unto me, to build it a house in the land of Shinar, and it shall be established and set there upon her own base. Okay, friends, here we go. We're about to get to the thing, but let's do a little recap here. Remember, this is my interpretation of this stuff, so just remember that. We're to be like Bereans and test all things against the word by our own individual senses, okay? So you guys need to do that. So the 10 kings are BRICS nations, with Russia sitting at the head of the table, and that has been fulfilled, in my opinion. Next, we see the horror of Revelation 17. She pops a squat on the beast and is, in fact, Mystery Babylon. She is also Sister Girl, who's hanging out in the ephah of Zechariah 5. So, they are the same woman. Okay. Also in Revelation 17 and backed up by Jeremiah 50, the 10 kings will ultimately attack the nation of where the woman is, But then something strange happens, and we see two women come out with wings like that of a stork, right? Okay, well, let me just say this. No, they are not angels. I have seen this too many times, and it really is all because of a translation error in the word kanaf. This is also in Exodus and other places, but it gets confused with the word miscellaneous and cherub. Literally the word miscellaneous and cherub. We know that it's not angels for two reasons, and this is where critical thinking and reductive reasoning comes in. But angels in the Bible never present as females. And so that said, if you're one of those people who saw an angel and it was a female, I'm sorry to say it wasn't an angel. No matter how pretty or nice she was. And don't even get me started on family members after their passing. Okay. I have my own experiences. So believe me, no female angels. But the other thing is that storks are considered unclean animals, period. Okay, so reductive reasoning. So we have two things here. We have no female angels and we have storks that are unclean. So there's no way that these two women are angels because storks are unclean. And even if they weren't, angels don't come in female form. But even if they did, storks are unclean. You follow me? See where I'm going with that? Okay, so this is where things get a little wonky. On the last episode, I stopped it when I started to talk about this because it was like a freaking light bulb, like something just landed on my head, and God started to lead me down this hole that personally, I've never heard this before, okay, as it relates to the Bible. So, in simple terms, I feel like this had to be God because there's no logical reason as to why I would research this stuff on my own. Okay. But I had to give you some information first in order to tie this whole thing together. And I know it's a lot. I hope you guys are following me on this. You might need to take notes. I don't know. Lord knows I had to write like a 30-page dissertation on it. So anyway, all right. So the two women in Zechariah 5. Now, a while back, when I started thinking about all this stuff before the 10 Kings prophecy passed, like months ago, I started thinking about this. I stumbled upon this website, and I'll try to remember to put the link in the description for you, but in case I forget, guys, please remind me on Facebook or whatever. It's CMOHS.org, and that stands for Congressional Medal of Honor Society. Okay, so Congressional Medal of Honor Society, CMOHS.org. And so I don't even remember how I got there, but I think it was because I was doing research on the gods and the goddesses, and I found myself watching a video on how Semiramis is connected to America. So fast forward now to the last episode, and I cut it off where I started talking about this. And so if you go to this website, which is actually pretty cool, by the way, like you can go and read stories of people who received the medal. And also, that being said, I'd like to say thank you to all of those who have served or are currently serving. You are priceless and invaluable. Everybody is, but I really wish that our government would take care of you the way that you should be taken care of. I think that without you guys, this country would just be like way worse. It would be like Venezuela, I think, or Ecuador. Hell, basically. So I just wanted to say thank you for doing everything that you guys do for my family and for myself and my friends. Yeah. If it were me that were in charge, things would be much different. I'm a patriot. I'm patriotic to you and to the Constitution, but my government, no. I am a monarchist who is loyal to one king and a citizen of heaven. And as far as I'm concerned, our government has not earned my respect. And the one world government to come can kiss off and go scratch. And now I'll probably be labeled a domestic terrorist for that. But you know what? I don't care. Like, I'm not scared. Anyway, so back to the medals. You will see a section called Design. And if you click on it, you'll see all of the branches of the military, and you can click on each link and see what each medal looks like. And there's like little tabs to click on to see, what the little parts of it stand for. And, but for the sake of this episode, I'll just go ahead and just break it down for you because I think it'll make a lot more sense. There are 5 medals, okay? There's the Army, the Navy, the Marines, the Air Force, and the Coast Guard. So I noticed something strange while going through it. The Navy, Marines, and the Coast Guard all have stars, but not just any stars. These stars are 5-point stars. But what makes them weird is that they're inverted, which makes that the high point is facing down. And in plain terms, you guys, that just makes it a satanic pentagram. Okay? And so these 3 branches all have the same exact design. They all have Minerva on it, along with a dude holding a bunch of snakes, and she's holding a shield with 13 stripes, whooping his behind. So all of these are the same, okay? So we got the Navy, the Marines, and the Coast Guard, and they're all the same. But then you go to the Army, and it's still Minerva. It's still an inverted pentagram, except it's a larger image of her. It's just her. And she's wearing a helmet with an owl on it. It also has a green laurel leaf garland around the star, which makes this a pentacle. And then there are oak leaves in between each star. And then perched upon the top is an eagle, symbolizing none other than the United States of America. And okay, so do a little breakdown here. So biblically, our owls are used as symbols of desolation, ruin, and judgment. The Bible depicts owls dwelling in places once inhabited by people or animals, but are now deserted and cursed by God. In Jeremiah 50, it talks about how owls will live in Babylon after it's fallen. And then in Zechariah chapter 11, verse 2, the oak symbolizes mourning and loss. The oak is mentioned in the context of lamentation, symbolizing the loss of glory. In Hosea chapter 4, verses 13, it symbolizes false worship and sin. The Israelites are condemned for offering sacrifices on the tops of mountains under spreading oak trees, indicating idol worship. That's one of the reasons why the Bible says, God says, do not build altars on high places. And that's one of the reasons, because they would do sacrifices on the tops of mountains. In Isaiah chapter 1, verses 29 and 30, it symbolizes false gods and idolatry. The passage actually speaks of oaks as a place where people engaged in idol worship, thus falling into disgrace. In Genesis chapter 35, verse 4, Jacob buries the foreign gods under an oak tree, indicating a rejection of foreign influences and a return to God's covenant. And so here's the thing. For as many places in the Bible where it talks about oaks in a negative manner, it's only due to the ways that the pagans regarded them, because they were used in ritualistic ways that were not of God. So biblically, in general, the oak is spoken of with regards to strength and in very positive ways. And the only time it's spoken negatively is with regard to the way that the pagans regarded them, which is what this website says that the leaves stand for. It stands for strength. But I think we all know that just because that's what it says it stands for doesn't actually mean that that's what it stands for, internet. And in critically thinking here, I mean, we're talking about Minerva, who's one of the 3 Roman deities in the Capitoline triad, along with Jupiter and Juno. Like, I think it's safe to say that the oak trees here are probably pagan related. By the way, Capitoline, when you hear the word Capitol Hill or Capitol building, that's what they're referring to. Capitol, Capitol. Moving on here. So next we have the Air Force medal, and this is where things started to get weird for me. This medal, like the rest, is also an inverted star, but like the Army, it has the wreath around it, which makes it a pentacle, in that it too, the laurel wreath is surrounding it, which, if you remember me saying that Apollo is usually depicted wearing it, put that in your brain somewhere because you're going to need it in a minute or like 30. Also, it has the oak leaves between the points. But here's the thing. The image in the center is Semiramis, aka the Statue of Liberty, Libertas. And they even indicate right there on the website that the image is derived from Queen Semiramis of Babylon, who is famed for her beauty, strength, and wisdom. Oh, but wait, there's more. In front of the lightning bolts that are indicated as the Air Force coat of arms, there's this staff, and it's a caduceus. This is the same staff that is used for half of the medical organizations out there still, even though it's wrong. And this is the same caduceus that Baphomet decided he wanted to borrow from Hermes' wardrobe. So let's do a little side note there. Go take a look at, there's a sculptor, his name is James Muir, and it's M as in Mary, U-I-R. He did a bronze sculpture for some hospital. I don't know which one, but y'all need to go look this up, because basically what it is it's Ishtar. It's called Caduceus is the name of the sculpture, and it's Ishtar. And you'll see what pops up. It's quite interesting, to say the least, but literally it looks just like the caduceus that is on this medal. It's very strange. So now we have 2 women, and both have wings, both literally because militarily and symbolically, one has an eagle and the other one has the wings of the caduceus. And guess what? I know that's okay, that's weird kind of a thing, but here we go. I already knew this stuff going into it, but I decided to dig a little more. And so I started with the stork. For whatever reason, I was just like, okay, why is this weird? I had like that really weird feeling. So I decided to go and I started with the stork. That's just weird to me. Why would I start with a stork? But anyway, so figured it was an unclean bird, big deal. But then that led me to a different kind of a stork, a project stork. So, okay, guys, if I'm late to the game on this, I do apologize, but I reached out to Chad and Sheri. They were really busy, and I we were not able to connect. And so I feel like this is their lane, but it is what it is. So here we are. And so if this is all, I wanted to find out if this is something that they'd ever heard of before, or like if this is something that you guys would probably have ever heard of before, knowing that most of you guys came from them. And I didn't want to be redundant, but it didn't work out. So if you have heard this before, I do apologize. However, I feel like the way I was led to this place is just as important as the information. Okay. So I find this Project Stork and how it was a code name for Battelle Memorial Institute, which most UFO people, researchers, so on and so forth, I guess they know about this place, okay, Battelle. And this place has been around since the 1920s. But before we get into that, we need to talk about these two guys, okay? So J. Allen Hynek and Jacques Vallée, if you don't know who these guys are, I'll briefly explain it. J. Allen Hynek was a main dude who advised the Air Force and the CIA on Project Blue Book. It was a program that was initiated to essentially mute the UFO reports that were coming out. These were like the Men in Black, per se, I guess would be the best way to put it, because they really just wanted to censor what was going out as far as the reports. And by the way, guys, like, I'm not an expert here, so if I get something wrong, please don't hesitate to let me in on that so that I can correct it, okay? And then we have Jacques Vallée. He's a French scientist who was and still is into the UFO movement, and actually one of the characters in the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind was based on him. If you've ever seen the movie, there's the French guy at the end of the movie. That's him. Anyway, so he moves to the U.S. With his wife, and he begins working with Hynek. Both guys would ultimately admit that they were under a lot of pressure by some certain people to not admit that UFOs were really a thing, no matter how much they saw or no matter how much they witnessed. And so they were basically told to like slow their roll. And then both also wrote books. One is called Forbidden Science, and that one's by Vallée. And the other is The UFO Experience, Evidence Behind Close Encounters, Project Blue Book, and The Search for Answers, and that one's by Hynek. So listed in Vallée's book, he talks about this memo. And the memo is stamped secret in red ink, and how it's written by a guy who calls himself Pentacle. Okay. This memo was written in 1953. Vallée reads it in 1967 and then publishes it in his book in the 90s, 1 year prior to it actually being available through the CUFON website, not to be confused with MUFON. And in this memo, there are plans to carry out secret exercises to make people think that there are UFOs when there are not. It says that there should be a, quote, secretly and purposefully, end quote, exercises to take place. And it also says that Project Stork and Project Blue Book should not meet to discuss anything further until Pentacle's experiments have concluded. Which, when you find out what I'm talking about here, if you don't already know, then you'll know that, well, it would never end, you guys. If these guys didn't, if they listened to what this guy had to say about not ever meeting until further experiments have concluded, like, the conclusion would never end. They would never allow that. They, in quotes. So basically, Vallée is confused because he can't trust what he saw. He he's asking himself, was what he saw real or was it not real? Because in this Pentacle memo, they're talking about how they're staging these sightings and so on and so forth. And there were actually documents that had surfaced that were actually speaking to the quote unquote faked UFO exercises, etc. So, I mean, I get it. He's like wondering, is this real or is it not real? What's going on? And then the two of those guys ultimately find that they were left out. It's almost like they were puppets, like they were figureheads. They were left out on a whole bunch of stuff. So fun fact here, apparently Tim Burchett came out, this was just yesterday. He was all PO'd because the feds ended up having a secret UFO hearing. While this is interesting here, it should not be surprising, but whatever, I'll get back to that. And that just happened, I think, not yesterday, but the day before. And this is Sunday night. So now let's go back to Project Stork, because ultimately that is what led me to where I am now. And so what is it? Project Stork was the code name given to a company that was contracted by the Air Force. And this company is called Battelle Memorial Institute. So who were these guys? What were they doing, right? Okay, so let's take a look. So basically, these guys started out as metalheads. Their mission page, okay, this is what it says. So more than 90 years ago, a young and bright industrialist named Gordon Battelle had a vision to unite the best scientific minds to benefit humanity. He believed that science, engineering, and research could bring competitive advantages to business while making the world a better place. And he was right. Today, and I'm sorry, you guys, just knowing what I know about this company now, like I'm cracking. And he was right. All right. So today, Battelle's mission to translate scientific discovery and technology advances into societal benefits is as relevant as ever. We are a $7 billion enterprise. That's what it says on their mission statement page. Anyway, so Battelle Memorial Institute, it ranks as the world's oldest and largest independent research and development organization with 48 locations worldwide. The firm identifies, evaluates, refines, and applies new and existing technologies for government and private clients in a wide variety of disciplines, including manufacturing, health sciences, computer technology, environment research, blah, blah. Now, I'm just going to say this. If you have existing and new technologies and you're working for the government, like, don't you think that working for private clients could also be like a conflict of interest? Just saying. They've also been instrumental in the development of such diverse products and processes as xerography, which is the Xerox machine, no-melt chocolate, gross, whiteout, love it, need it, and so does Grace from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. She sniffed it, so apparently she liked it too. Cruise control for automobiles, also cool. And then there's the plastic six-pack straps. Okay, dum-dums. Like, you guys developed that thing, and then you should probably figure out a way to stop those things from being death traps to the animals that we, like, cohabitate with, okay? Go ahead and use your environmental research lab to figure that out. Could ya? Just saying. I'm getting a little feisty here. Anyway, so you know what else they've got dibs in, you guys? The Universal Product Code, the QR code, yo. The UPC, the scan thing. Okay. And you want to know what else is on their resume? Space travel. Mm-hmm. What kind of space travel, you ask? Well, they were instrumental in sending up Apollo. So, go to the cultural page of this website and you're met with a coalition of people sporting gay pride, but that's not what struck me. Okay, like whatever, right? They're jumping on the governmental trendy wagon, which is fine. But what struck me was what the shirts they're all wearing resemble. Okay, so it doesn't say pride, even though they have the rainbows and they're like obviously representing. But here's what it says. It's got 3 segments of the periodic table of elements, and it doesn't spell pride. It spells chrism, which is an obelisk. I get it, rainbow, right? But it's an obelisk. And if you've listened to any of my other episodes, you'd know what an obelisk means. Okay, let's just say that while the rainbow does belong to God, the obelisk is not his symbol. Obelisks and triangles are symbolic of the occult and ancient gods and goddesses. Okay. So what else? Let's see. What else did they do? Okay. So they messed with uranium for a while, which ultimately put them on the map. And they were working the Manhattan Project. They're heavily immersed in biodefense, cyber defense, war defense, biosecurity, and of course, ecology, because that's normal when you're doing all those other things. And they just so happen to manage the National Biodefense Analysis and Countermeasures Center at Los Alamos National Lab. Whew. So what I find funny is that their words regarding what I said they were heavily immersed in, like heavily immersed is my phrase. They said that they, quote unquote, contribute to it. So here's my question. How does one contribute to something that they manage? Like I'm more inclined to say they're just doing it all. You know what I mean? Let's be real. They're also into neurology, because of course they are. They're there to, quote, assist, restore, and enhance. And this is what they're doing. They say, we're assisting the body to go beyond physical limitations where biology is broken. We're restoring the body by optimizing recovery through targeted neuroplasticity and bioelectric medicine. And we're advancing the healthy body to perform beyond current physical and cognitive abilities. That's their enhance edict. Because a healthy body, apparently that's what they need. So honestly, there's more, but you get the idea, right? In 1929, 6 years after their inception, Battelle partnered with the Reynolds Metals Company on Battelle's second ever research project called Project S2, i.e. aluminum foil. In 1947, the Reynolds Metals Company released Reynolds Wrap aluminum foil. Okay, aluminum, isn't everything. In 1920, Gordon Battelle drew up a will mandating the creation of the Battelle Memorial Institute, and 3 years later, he died. He was 40 years old, and it says that he died unexpectedly from complications of a routine appendectomy. Battelle had willed almost half of his estate to the creation of the Institute, and when his mother, Annie Norton Battelle, died 2 years later, she left the balance of the family fortune to the Institute, bringing the total endowment to $3.5 million, which was a lot of money. that was a lot of money back then. It's a lot of money now. Okay. So right out of the gate, you guys, these guys were in deep. Okay. Like really 6 years later. So Battelle's first U.S. patent was filed in 1932, and it was filed by a guy named Horace Gillette. And that was Battelle's first president. And then another guy by the name of Howard Cross. You're going to want to hold on to that. So I'm going to stop here and say that Pentacle, who actually wrote the Pentacle Memo, is actually Howard Cross. Both men were recognized at the time as two of the world's foremost metalheads. So we've got Gillette and Howard Cross. And these guys were in it. They were the first of many. This was the first of many patents to be assigned to Battelle over the decades in all areas of science and technology. All areas. So, I mean, I find it quite interesting that both he and his mama die, like, within 5 years of each other. And like, he was young. He wasn't even a half a century old yet. He was only 40 years old. So, all right, but stick with me here. Okay, so Battelle, like, they've been around the block. They've been doing things that people just started talking about like 10 years ago regarding how, quote unquote, they were going to control us and so on and so forth. They're in with the big guys like the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds and the John Hopkins, who are owned by Rockefellers, by the way. In fact, just about every university is owned by them in some form or fashion. Like if you see Hopkins, the Rockefellers are sitting in the shadows somewhere. They're not far behind. Anyway, they're a huge contributor, if not the largest contributor, because they contribute in several different tiers, but they're right up there with the Gates when we're talking about the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Okay, so this center has all of these people who are contributing, and Battelle is in like 3 or 4 different tiers, and then you've got all these other people who are in one. The Gates, I think, are at like $250,000 or more. These guys, Battelle, they're in 250. They're also in 100. They're in, they're all over the place. But they are giving money to the Center for Strategic and International Studies. And so like they have like a really nice name, right? Like the CSIS, that's what, their acronym is. And, when you read the word studies, like that's what you think they're doing. They're studying, right? Strategically and internationally studying, except that's not really what it is. And I think you should actually go to the website. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just go there, because you can like pause this right now and write it down. Center for Strategic and International Studies. Because you know what? There's a Center for Health Security, and they did Event 201. Remember that? Just saying. Go there and check it out. It's weird, you guys. It's not what I thought it would be. Anyway, so these guys, they're in like Flynn with the World Economic Forum as well. In fact, way back in 2012, they, meaning Battelle, were awarded a $102 million contract to work with NIAID, which, and someone else, there was another one and it's escaping me, but NIAID is where Fauci's wife worked, I believe. In short, they were supposed to do a bunch of stuff with influenza and some other things, but in particular, this $102 million contract was to help develop the immunoassays for a plague vaccine candidate composed of 2 different recombinant plague proteins and an aluminum salt adjuvant. which means that basically what they were doing is they were looking for a disease that they could apply a vaccine to. But in order to apply the vaccine, they needed to have the proteins, 2 of them they were looking for, that were connected to each other, so that they could test it. Like, literally, that's all it was. So basically, think COVID, okay? And all I can say at this point is that when Trump blurted out AIDS virus and bleach, and people started drinking bleach, like that was such a blunder, you know? But check this out, you guys. Like he wasn't that far off. In fact, if there are any doctors out there who have patients who were jabbed and now those people have buyer's remorse, why not try an HIV cocktail? Like, I'm no doctor here, but I'm an herbal practitioner. And so, like, my job is to research anatomy and the things that affect it. Okay. Supportive and supplemental ways to feel good. Right. And so I know I'm getting off topic here, but you guys, we're talking about the New World Order here. So when they start rolling out the stupid shot, there was something in particular that stood out to me, at least, about the countries in Africa that were giving out the HIV cocktail as a prophylactic because of the AIDS issue there. Okay, so like they were handing the stuff out like it was a condom and to everybody, using it as a prophylactic. So whether they had HIV or not, they were given this cocktail. And what they were finding is that there was a decrease in death associated with the jab. So the reason is very simple. The AIDS virus is like a body snatcher. Okay, it uses the reverse transcriptase to quote unquote body snatch each cell, but not before replicating it into the exact copy of the one it just took over, and then turning it into an infected copy, okay, of that virus. And it uses the reverse transcriptase, which is kind of like a zipper. It's RT to complete that process. But just like the AIDS virus has RT, or reverse transcriptase, so does the spike protein in the COVID vaccine. So this is okay. Now this is your mRNA, which you've probably heard before, but the RT is what is responsible for replicating each healthy cell and turning the healthy cell into the infected cell. Okay, so the HIV cocktail stops that RT from replicating the cells, which is why either Magic Johnson never had AIDS or that stuff works, right? Frankly, I'm really tired of hearing this one doctor talk about how they've, quote unquote, been telling them for years. Out of respect, I won't mention this particular person by name, and I'll probably even get some flack here, but you know what? I don't care. What's right is right. If there's any doctor out there with balls, please contact me. I have some people who are jabbed and miserable and feel like they've got nothing to lose and are willing to be guinea pigs. So like, let's stop with the narrative. It's been overstated. Like, we get it. Okay. You've quote unquote been telling them this and that for years. And there's this literature and that literature and peer reviewed this, blah, blah, blah. Like, do something with it. Okay. Like, I mean, if you at this point, what have you got to lose? You know, if there's any doc out there, please, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, and I'll gladly take it and I'll gladly be corrected, you know, because I don't know everything, right? None of us do. But if this is a thing and it worked before, then why haven't you tried this yet? You're afraid to lose your license. Okay, I get it, right? But somebody has to be the lone nut. Okay, like, I'm just done with this. What are you going to do about it, dude? If I could write a script, I would. Because guess what? They're not going to pull this vaccine. So just get that, right out of your head. They're not going to pull this vaccine, not when guys like Travis Kelce, and his Illuminati girlfriend, Taylor Swift, they're pushing it like it's the cool thing to do. Kelce said he believes it makes him and his family safer. Brett, like, can you read? Can you read? No, sir. I'm sorry to say. They are not going to pull this vaccine. You know what they're going to do? They're going to repackage it and they will reuse it in some other application. Probably to deliver some different type of nanotech. Okay? So, but in the meantime, there's people who are suffering because of this thing. And, I get pretty fired up about this. And so, let me tell you something else. We're all guaranteed to die. And we are all judged based on what we know and what we believe and what we do. Okay, so here's the deal. Actually, technically not what we do. Sort of. That's a whole nother thing. But here's the thing. Once you know, you can't unknow. Okay, so I'm just going to leave that right there. Now you know. If you are who you are and you hear me, now you know it. Do something about it. Whew. Okay, so sorry about that little rant there. Back on track. I'm talking about Battelle. So back in November, the AP, I know, they're just like the most trusted source. Anyway, they actually reported on this. Lockheed Martin, this company, BWXT and Creer, will partner with Lockheed Martin. Also, the company Aerojet Rocketdyne will partner with Westinghouse. And then IX, which is a joint venture of Intuitive Machines and X Energy, the company will partner with Maxar and Boeing, who, by the way, and I'm not going to go down this hole, but their fuel is called Triso-X, and it burns at 4 times that of a nuclear reactor, and it can't melt. Okay, so it's uranium, and it doesn't melt. And it's its own containment system. And it doesn't melt. They don't have to put it into huge concrete and steel reactors and keep it at certain temperatures. So basically what they're saying is that Chernobyl will never happen again. So my question is, why aren't we doing this now, everywhere? And it's not the price tag, you guys, because a conventional reactor costs $10 billion. And this is just 2.4. Okay. I'm getting off here. But this is why this is important, because all these guys here, along with NASA and Battelle, are about to put a nuclear power plant on the moon. Okay. Oh, so maybe you believe they landed on the moon, and maybe you don't. Either way, they have to hide their expenditures somewhere, right? I personally believe that's a really great way to do it, is to say that you're going to go ahead and put a nuclear reactor on the moon. So, but here's what's weirder, okay? The requirements of this thing is that it has to provide no less than 40 kilowatts of continuous electric power for 10 years in the lunar environment on AC current, which is Tesla's model, And I'm talking my guy, Nicola. Okay. No offense, Elon, but Nick was the original OG. Okay. He was the original gangsta. And AC is what we should be on right now, but that's for another episode or whatever. Just so you know, the average is about 30 kilowatts per 5-person home or a 3,000 square foot house. Oh my gosh. But the kicker, here's the kicker. It has to be unmanned. Okay, so like it has to know when to turn itself on and off, and it needs to have this power, and it's got to go for 10 years. For what, you guys? Like, for what? Why do they need this thing? Can somebody please make it make sense to me? Why we're putting this nuclear reactor that costs a fraction of what an actual nuclear reactor that we have all over the place on Earth, that's on direct current and not, we're on a direct current grid and not alternating current. And it's got its own containment system and it burns 4 times hotter and it doesn't melt. Can somebody please make this make sense to me? Why they need to put this thing on the moon and why we're not using it here, like on Earth where we live? Oh my gosh. This stuff just, my head. So I personally think that someone maybe read the Bible and like they think maybe they can escape some things. And so they're, but all right, I'm not going to go there just yet. All right. So I'm going to stick to the thing. So the bottom line, okay, is that if you know anything about the congressional hearing regarding the UAPs, that happened like 6 months ago or whatever it was. I don't know. Was it 6 months ago? I don't know. I can't remember. How fast time is flying for me. We were told that 60% of the budget is unaccounted for. So this sounds like a great way to hide a bunch of money to me. I'm just saying, like putting a nuclear reactor on the moon for no reason. Like, that's awesome. Who I could just see, they're sitting in their little meeting room and they're like, yeah, I got this great idea. Let's put this nuclear reactor on the moon for no reason. Isn't that awesome? Let's do it. Yeah. Cool. Patent. Boom. Done. Anyways, listen. All right. So I'm verbally vomiting here. This episode just, it was a lot on my brain. So, okay, now we're going to talk about this guy. And this guy is the dude that opened up the congressional hearing on the UAPs. His name is the Honorable Ronald Moultrie. So, who is he? Right? Let's go look and see who this guy is. So, I went to the Department of Defense's website and I got this information. And I found it quite interesting. The Honorable Ronald S. Moultrie. By the way, how do I get that name, Honorable? Can I do it? He was sworn in as Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security on June 1st of 2021. In this role, he is the principal advisor of the Secretary of Defense on Intelligence, Counterintelligence, and Security Matters. He exercises authority, direction, and control on behalf of the Secretary of Defense over all intelligence and security organizations within the Department of Defense, including the NSA, which is the National Security Agency, the Defense Intelligence Agency, the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, the National Reconnaissance Office, the Defense Counterintelligence and Security Agency, and the intelligence components of the combatant commands of military services. He is also dual-hatted as the Director of Defense Intelligence in the Office of the Director of National Intelligence and reports to the DNI. So basically, he reports to himself. Like, What? So there's no conflict of interest there, at all. Nothing to see here, folks. But prior to becoming Undersecretary of Defense, Mr. Moultrie has 36 plus years in a career, including serving in senior leadership, positions throughout the DoD, no kidding, and the national intelligence community, no kidding. He retired from the DoD in 2015, yet still works there. I mean, how much sense does that make? So crazy. But he was the NSA director of operations. Like, all of this is just a whole bunch of word vomit that is so redundant and rhetorical. Like, it's just so crazy. His previous NIC roles, which is the National Intelligence Community, included his service as a senior member of the Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA, Senior Intelligence Service, responsible for a major office within the Directorate of Science and Technology, no surprise there, and as a senior executive officer serving the DNI, the Department of National Intelligence. Wait. Which one did he retire from again? He later rejoined the NSA as a senior executive, where he remained until retirement. More recently, Mr. Moultrie was a senior advisor to the Secretary of the Navy, playing an instrumental role in the Department of the Navy, comprehensive cybersecurity review. He subsequently led the crafting of a digital roadmap to better optimize the department's focus on cybersecurity, data analytics, and infrastructure, and emerging technologies such as AI, machine learning. Remember that. AI, machine learning, 5 and 6G, and quantum computing. Okay. Here we go. He is the recipient of a Presidential Rank Award, 2 Navy Distinguished Civilian Service Awards, the DNI SEAL Medallion, the National Intelligence Distinguished Service Medal, the CIA Donovan Award, and is a 3-time recipient of the NSA's highest award, the Exceptional Civilian Service Award. He also won the NRO Gold Medal, which, just saying, has the image of the Earth with the moon orbiting it. While on active duty, Mr. Moultrie received the Defense Meritorious Service Medal and U.S. Air Force Meritorious Service Medal. Apparently, they're different. The difference is between these two is that the Defense Meritorious is awarded to peeps that are in joint, meaning more than one military organization. Are you kidding me? Like, can we say conflict of interest, people? He holds a Master of Science degree in Strategic Intelligence from the National Intelligence University, a Bachelor of Arts degree, magna cum laude, in Business Management, which I think is funny, from the University of Maryland, and he completed senior executive studies at Harvard University's Kennedy School of Government. And just to top it all off, you guys, he has a Russian language degree from the Defense Language Institute at Monterey. So, why does this guy make me itch? Like, because he worked with Battelle. Okay, he worked with Battelle. And in all transparency, I got this information from the organization pogo.org, who apparently is there to keep people in Congress and government, like, honest and whatever, I guess. But essentially, a dude named Christopher Sharp, who is a journalist for the Liberator Times in the UK, he's the one that found Moultrie's resume on that particular website and then reposted it to Twitter. So, I mean, is there a chance that it might not be true? Sure. Okay. But I doubt it. Like, there it was. It was dude's resume. And there it was. Battelle, board of directors. And it has since been deleted. And like, I'm not saying, I'm not saying that it's shady or anything, but I know that the best way to stay undetected is to not be somewhere for very long. Like, experience over here. Okay. Nobody can figure out where I am at any point in time because of the fact that I have 20,000 freaking addresses. Thanks God. Not by my choice. It's a good thing I'm honest. But anyway, look, his resume indicates that he was with Battelle for less than 2 years. And this is weird to me. It was removed from his LinkedIn profile. But like, here's the thing. That's not real. No one goes to work with Battelle for less than 2 years to just like move on. That's not real. In fact, I think it's safe to say that the only people who were with Battelle for the least amount of time were Gordon and his mama, right? Both dead within 5 years. And I'm pretty sure there's a reason for that. Deep state. Okay. So did I say that? Yes, I did. So why is this important? Dude, I'm telling you guys, my husband is going to freak out. Like he's going to, I can tell you right now, when he hears this episode, he's probably going to be like, yo, you need to just pipe it down, girl. Okay. Because we going to get some knocking on that door and then we going to have to, bust him out. I'm sorry. He doesn't really talk like that. Even if he did, it wouldn't matter. I'd still love him, but he's going to flip out. But why is this important? Okay. So it all ties together and it all means something. But here's my thing. When someone like this guy has a quote unquote nothing to see here banner wrapped around his person, I feel like that's when we should be paying attention. So I'm going to come back to him. Just bear with me here. But like, remember, this is where the whole thing started. The breakdown, right? Started with the stork and Battelle. So, okay. So now there's this guy, Chen. He works at a company called Brookhaven, which is in partnership with Battelle. They just delivered a high-powered, like crazy magnet to CERN. And that was last month, I believe. And come later this month, I believe it's January 24th, they're starting a program. They're taking bids for it right now, I believe. But they're starting a program in which this dude named Hu Chang Chen, who happened to have also worked on the Atlas project with CERN, he developed something called cold microelectronics. So these are for neutrino detectors, and these things are global. Like everybody has them. Go look up Sean Ryan's podcast with Eric Hecker, and that'll give you a pretty decent clue on what these things are. And then go look up scalar waves. It'll all come together for you. Because it's all there and it's real. But this guy has done a bunch of stuff, and Battelle works really tight with him. He works with Brookhaven, and remember, Battelle and Brookhaven are in a partnership together. And in particular, this one thing caught my attention, and it's called the National Synchrotron Light Source 2. And basically, in layman's terms, they've got these beams of light that they're going to hook up to the Internet of Things, which you've heard me speak about before. It was on the Transhuman episode. If you haven't heard it, go back and listen to it. It's the Internet of Things. And on this website, this is what it says. And this is just a fraction, you guys, but like this is what it says. It says, this Internet of Things analysis engine analysis engine involves several components. It would orchestrate experiments across multiple end stations using the Blue Sky data collection framework, it just means it's cloud technology. And this is a library for experiment control and collection of scientific data and metadata. This engine would also include flexible automation for sample manipulation and transport, so autonomous robots, programmed in the open source robotic operating system, otherwise known as the ROS. And it would incorporate the Bayesian, I don't know how to pronounce it, I'm really sorry, optimization, which basically allows the machine to learn in real time and across every beam line. Okay? So, this system would also include features such as reinforcement learning. Okay, when someone says reinforcement learning, like, I could just take that in so many different directions. But anyway, so what they're using that for is to optimize the operations and make the best use of their resources. That sounds about right. Additionally, I love how they put this in here. Additionally, it would include an interface to keep the human operators fully looped in. Let's take a breath. What did I just read? Fully looped in. Okay. Simply this, friends. This thing can search out and manipulate anything that has light. Okay? And so guess what uses light? We do. Every single time you process a thought, an electric surge lights up in your brain, creating a synapse. So, let me remind you here. Revelation chapter 17, verse 13. These, the 10 kings, have one mind, and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. Did you hear what I said? Did you hear what I said? Okay, next. So I always have something to say about distraction, right? All right, so listen. If you guys don't know who Stephen Greer is, he's a dude that, Dr. Stephen Greer, he's heavily immersed in the UFO community. And if you've listened to Chad and Sheri, you've probably heard of him. Stephen Greer, who, by the way, I'm just going to say that if you're listening to this guy, don't. I repeat, do not. Please. I ain't trying to tell you what to do, but I'm going to tell you don't do this, okay? Don't get into the thing that he's doing. He's doing this thing with a whole bunch of different people, from celebrities to randos. He's doing this thing. He's communicating or claiming to communicate with things that are quote unquote out there. Okay. I'm telling you, he may be intelligent. He is very intelligent, but knowledge does not, under any circumstances, equal wisdom. Guys, just remember that. My 11-year-old is wiser than half of society that's over the age of 45, okay? Or 50. It does not include wisdom. It does not equal wisdom, I should say. And the fact that he's opening his mind to this stuff tells me he really has no idea what he's dealing with, because it's a cult activity. He just won't call it that. But that's what it is. So don't do that stuff. Anyway, he came out years ago with that documentary that he did called Unacknowledged, talking about how we not only have alien technology, but also actual alien biology. biologics and how they're quote unquote worried about us and they want to help us. Okay. But then he comes out recently totally contradicting what he says in his new documentary called Disclosure, in which case he says that we're only made to think that these are extraterrestrial beings from another planet. But he won't come right out and say that what we're really dealing with in this other dimension is demonic. Instead, he says that we've had this technology for at least 100 years or so, which I do believe because Tesla and Battelle. But rather, he says that the people who have access and control of this technology are evil. Okay. So, like, I buy that too, because, we're not fighting against flesh and blood, but rulers and principalities behind the rulers, etc. But, like, which is it, dude? Which is it? Okay, so now let's back up a little bit to that congressional hearing. And talk about Moltier. So Moltier opens and testifies that yes, they're here. Okay. And it's a problem for our airspace and something needs to be done. Right? He says that, except this guy knows that what we're dealing with here aren't conventional aliens. Okay. He knows this because of his status in the military, as well as with the military-industrial complex, okay? And because of his ties with Battelle and NASA and, like, everything else in the alphabet agencies in the world, across the board. Like, he's literally tied to every entity in the New World Order. And if you ask me, like, Battelle, they might as well be the hub, not the World Economic Forum or the International Monetary Fund. Oh, they're just mouthpieces at this point. Like, they're the ones that are just pushing out the narrative. You got Klaus Schwab, Darth Schwab, who's out there, as the mouthpiece. Becca, taka. Do this, do that. But, like, there's not a single person on earth that can convince me that Moltier doesn't know what's going on. And, like, I go into comment sections and I see people saying things regarding this UAP hearing, and they're like, oh, this is so exciting. Like, we're finally going to get to the truth. And I just sit there and shake my head. I'm like, no, you're not. You're being deceived. You're being deceived. You're not going to get the truth from them. Okay. That's all a distraction. It's all to make you think that we're quote unquote headed in the right direction. Right? I mean, like, in all reality, think about it. What's come out since then? Nothing except more distractions. So what's going on then? What's going on? Well, okay, I am trying to put together a timeline for you. And I'm trying to do that using literal language and figurative language and the symbolism of not only who the players are here in the real world, but also where we are in the game biblically. Okay. And so there was a huge amount to unpack here, but we can see that there's a clear line between two teams, right? We can see that. One's truth, the other's not. One's light, the other's dark. If you've listened to any of my other episodes, a lot of this is familiar. So hopefully you can follow me here, okay? Because this is where I'm going to tie it up. So we have two seals that are broken. The first is a plague, and I'm not going to go down into this in this episode, but What I can say is that this whole disease X thing, like, we already had it. You guys, disease X was invented in 2015. And then we were able to put a name to it. It was coronavirus, okay? Disease X is just a blanket statement for whatever the next pandemic is. And once the next one comes along, they'll put a name to it, and then it'll be disease X again. So, like, I'm not saying that it can't happen, but just based on the timeline of the ages, which I promise I'll do an episode on. In fact, I think it's going to be the next one. But just based on the ages and the prophecies that have come to pass already, I don't think that the believers out there will be seeing disease X. And if we do, it will not be on the scale that they want us to think it's on, like with a 90% kill rate. Okay. Remember, they wanted us to think that everyone was going to die from COVID. Okay. Same thing, guys. Same thing. So, seal 1, check. Seal 2. Some people want to say that Psalm 83 was fulfilled back in 1967. I choose to think that it's being fulfilled currently due to the fact that it proceeds fairly closely, in my opinion, to Ezekiel 38. And just looking at the world stage, it seems to be set and waiting for their cue. But, like, in my opinion, this seal was broken with Russia and Ukraine, you guys. So understand that the second seal is war, not the 10 kings. Okay? It's war. Also understand that Jesus speaks of this time like birth pains, remember? And that there will be wars and rumors of wars. Okay, well, look, we know that China is looking to attack Taiwan. And literally 2 nights ago, as of this recording, the Secretary of Air Force, who is also the head of the Space Force, Mr. Frank Kendall, remarked recently, quote, China is preparing for war, and specifically for a war with the United States. Why? Well, 1, we support Taiwan's sovereignty. And, then of course there's 10 kings. So there's that. Okay, so now according to the Bible, in the end of days, Israel will be a quote-unquote cup of trembling for all the nations in the world. And currently, even though Israel is following international law with regard to the war, they are not only being persecuted for it, but they're being called genocidal and are asking to cease fire. Guys, listen, okay? They have been extremely precise with the attacks that they've carried out. And if you know anything about Israel and the IDF and Mossad, then you know that usually they don't miss. And I say usually because I am remembering the 3 hostages that were accidentally shot. Okay, but you know what? Here's the thing. You guys, they took responsibility for it and they were accountable for it, which is more than I can say for our own country, like Afghanistan, Benghazi, 9/11, right now, the Houthis. We're out there and it's clear as day that we're carrying out attacks, but we won't come forward and say that it's us and take responsibility for it. Like, come on, yo. This is just crazy. Anyway. All right. So Israel is doing their best to also push through humanitarian aid to the citizens of Gaza, right? But they're still getting the cold shoulder. Nevertheless, Israel has become a cup of trembling. And so when we see everyone against Israel, God says that they will become a burdensome stone. So now they're a cup of trembling, but they're going to become a burdensome stone as soon as everybody comes against them. And guess what? He's going to crush everyone that attempts to come at them. So we're not quite there just yet, but we're going to get there, and it's probably going to be soon. And truth be told, I hope I'm not here to see it. I'm just saying. But let's talk about the U.S. Here's the deal. Make no mistake, you guys, we are at war, both by proxy, politically, okay, and physically. So why won't they come out and say it? 2 words, election year. But make no mistake, you guys, we are at war, okay? So seal 2, check. And that being said, I just want to say that the 3rd seal releases famine, which generally follows war. So there's that. The 4th seal releases the 4th horseman, whose name is Death. Well, actually, his name is Thanatos, and he apparently brings his buddy, Hades, with him. Some might also call him Pluto. But you know who else he is, you guys? He's Vulcan. And he is the one who gives the Freemasons their quote-unquote power. Did you hear that? Yeah. So let's remember that every inauguration is simultaneous with the Freemasons of the highest degree performing their raising of Osiris ritual. So, Antichrist. Okay, but I digress. That's for another episode. We'll do a complete Revelation series one day. Honestly, though, you guys, to understand Revelation, there's so many other parts of the Bible that you need to know. It's, again, the New Testament is in the Old Testament concealed, and the Old Testament is in the New Testament revealed. So, at least I think I got that right. You guys know what I'm saying. Next, the U.S. is mysteriously absent from Bible prophecy, with the exception that there are some who take the stance that the young lions of Tarshish, which would be the young nations that come out of the UK, would be the U.S., in which case we'll be around to see the start of Ezekiel 38. And even though we claim to be in alliance with Israel, what will happen in that prophecy is under a weak leadership, we will simply wag our finger and say, nay, nay, shouldn't have done that. What you doing? You need to stop it. Yeah, weak leadership. And one thing to know, if you don't already, is that even though it's an election year, if we are at war, then the sitting president stays. So I have my own theory about how this is going to go. I won't get into that here, but I'm just giving that to you as something to chomp on. Like, sitting president stays. Well, kind of feel like they don't want Biden. I don't know. Maybe they do. Who knows? But they're not calling it war. So now, based on scripture, we've been able to put some things together. And listen, I know that this all sounds grim, okay? But I'm telling you, there's a light at the end of this tunnel here. And so my job is not to sugarcoat any of this for you. I am accountable for the things that I say. And so my job is to offer you the evidence as to why you can believe what the Bible says, which I have given a fraction of proof that should be enough, but there's a ton more, and I'll bring it to you, I promise. Anyway, that's my job. And then my job is to give you what the Bible says. And then hopefully you're able to make the right decision as to what team you're going to play for and how you're going to play. Okay. Because if my interpretations are correct here, then we are sitting on the precipice of the very end, friends. And I want you to know that I have many reasons for feeling this way. It's not just prophecy. It's not just math. There's extra biblical things that are allowing me to come to this conclusion as well. So, all right. So next, 2 winged women. So my opinion is that these women signify the Pentagon and their involvement with the aftermath and takedown of the woman in the basket, i.e., the whore of Babylon. Okay. We have the Pentagon, we have pentacles, we have pentagrams. All right. The stork in Zechariah 5 is what led me to believe that according to the Pentacle Memo, who, let's remember, this was actually Howard Cross, and he was with Battelle from the beginning. These players are in the Pentagon. Okay, the Pentacle Memo. These players in the Pentacle Memo are in the Pentagon. In particular, the Army and the Air Force, but more specifically, the Space Force, NASA, and Battelle is who I think we are dealing with. The Pentacle Memo obviously doesn't mention the Space Force and whatnot, but the Air Force is the Space Force. What's the word I'm looking for? They are under the Air Force, so they answer to the Air Force. And so, like, why these guys? To me, why these guys? Why the Space Force, NASA, Battelle, all these guys? Why? So, okay, well, let's remember who the stork is. It's Project Blue Book's code for Battelle. Code name for Battelle. But remember, in Zechariah 5, the woman is, quote unquote, lifted up between heaven and earth. Who would be able to pull that off? I think that this is a literal thing going on here. Who would be able to pull that off? Lifted up in Hebrew literally means NASA, right? Remember that? And NASA is BFFs with Battelle. And Battelle is BFFs with the Air Force. And the Air Force runs the Space Force. Like, they're all connected. Okay, so check this out. The beast that thou sawest was and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit and go into perdition. And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was and is not, and yet is. And the beast that was and is not, even he is the eighth, and is of the seven, and goeth into perdition. Now listen, I know that that's confusing. Just remember perdition. I did break that down with, the who was and is not, and so on and so forth. I broke that down in the last episode. If you haven't heard it, go back and listen to it. But for right now, hang on to that word perdition, okay? So I'm about to read this, but I want to set it up for you. In Revelation 9, there's a lot going on in that out of this bottomless pit comes a bunch of locusts, okay? And they can sting. And apparently the sting is so excruciating, it lasts for 5 months. By the way, these things are only reserved for those who either took the mark of the beast or they were not sealed on the forehead by God. Did you know that God has a seal too? He's got a mark too on the forehead. Anyway, in my opinion, these guys look a lot like a drone or something that, I don't know, maybe Battelle would think up. Like, just saying. And we have to remember that John, okay, the writer, John the Revelator, the writer of this book, Revelation, would have had no idea what he was looking at. He wouldn't have looked at it and been like, oh, yeah, it's a drone from Battelle. And it's, and like, as far as the hair goes, so there's hair on this thing, right? And there's like, so it's got like the stinging and it's got hair and teeth. And so basically, if you think about it, it looks like a type of a ghillie suit. Okay. Like, think about that for a second. And when you think about what would happen in those times, like these are perilous times that they're going to be in this moment, right? So why wouldn't they hide these drones? I don't know. Anyway, that's just all speculation, I suppose. So here's the thing. Revelation 9:11, which I find interesting, 9:11, I always find that interesting. They have a king over them. And this is what it says. And they had a king over them. It's talking about the quote unquote scorpions that come out of the bottomless pit. Okay. And it says, and they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue, his name is Apollyon. In English, it's Apollo. Now listen. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 3. Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come except there come a falling away first. That means apostasy. And that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition. Okay, so in Greek, the word for perdition is apollia. In English, it's Apollo. Guess who Apollo's son is? Well, one of his sons. He was a busy dude. Apollo's son, in particular, this one, is Asclepius. He's the one with the medical caduceus. Remember the caduceus? Same staff that's sitting with Baphomet and Hermes, and yeah. Guess who his mama is? His mama is Coronis, or in English, Corona. Okay, so let's take a quick breath on that. I want to remind you of something. Who do we know on scene of all these players who's affiliated with Apollo? All of them. NASA and Vittel, the lunar module, guys. And let's not forget that for whatever reason, they're trying to put nuclear power on the moon. Why are they doing that? So let's remember something else here, okay? These two women with wings, they're taking this woman in the basket between heaven and earth. Why? Why are they doing that? To set her on her new base. What kind of a base is it, you guys? I'm thinking it's a military base, just saying. You know what this sounds like to me? It sounds like a continuity of government. That's what that sounds like to me. And why? Why? Because of if the United States of America is Mystery Babylon, and the Holy Law, remember? The Holy Law, that was the flying scroll that has gone through the land, as it said in Zechariah 5, then we can bet that the government is not going to fall for that, right? So, as a result, our country ultimately will become desolate. However, remember, there's still life, because the Bible said that they remove and they depart. Okay. So now, this is just up until now, you guys. There is, in my opinion, a lot more that needs to be touched on here. But I'm hoping that you have a decent understanding of what's happening right now. Why it's happening, who's involved. Okay, it's really important to keep your eyes on Israel, guys. Prophecy surrounds them. The tribulation is ultimately for them. And it's not pretty. Okay, it's because they're blinded. That's what the Bible says. The Bible says that only when the fullness of the Gentiles come in, meaning meaning if you're not Jewish and you're not saved, when you get saved and like that last person, that last Gentile gets saved, that only then will all Israel be saved. Unfortunately, it's not going to be pretty. 2/3 of every Jew, 2/3 of every Jew will die. Now, that being said, this is where I feel like the more people that I can like try and give this information to, Jews, and get Messianic Jews saved, then that number goes down. You know what I mean? Like it still stays 2/3, but the more that we can, take the blinders off and let them see by learning these prophecies of the Old Testament and by learning the ways to be able to prove this stuff, then that number goes down. It's 2/3. It's an approximation. It's 2/3 of who is left at that point. Okay? So, here's the thing. While I feel like, God is a great commander. Remember, we're at war. We're at war. God is the great commander, in that he will bring out his ambassadors prior to his wrath. The Bible says we are not appointed for his wrath. Okay, remember that. There is plenty of evidence, though, that says that Christians will have to endure tribulation. I just don't believe that we're going to endure the great tribulation. I'm on board with like pre-trib rapture, which is best case scenario I'm hoping for. But at the very least, it's mid-trib, just before the desolation, abomination of desolation. Okay, which is spoken of in Daniel, but that's 3.5 years in. So we need to understand something here. 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 17 says, For the time has come that judgment must begin at the house of God. And if it first begin with us, what shall the end be of them that obey not the gospel of God? So what does that mean? That means that it's going to begin with us, the ones that are the believers. It starts here with us. But that being said, too, remember this, and I'll say it every time. Jesus stands knocking, right? He literally says that he wants to come, hang out, and chow. So I'm telling you, as sure as I have breath in my lungs, I promise you that if you have not surrendered to Christ, and if you have not asked him to come in and chow, these seals continue on, your life is going to suck 100 times worse than if you had. Like, I'm just trying to be real, because he is going to take his own out of harm's way. That's what the Bible says. And I believe what the Bible says, and there's reasons why I believe it. But he is going to take his own out of harm's way, and trust me when I say you want to be there. Okay. So my Eric has made me some pizza so that I could do this episode tonight. And so I'm going to go eat that pizza with thanks in my heart and a prayer that your ears will hear, and spread it and go open up that door if you haven't already, so that Jesus can pop a squat with you and y'all can chat over what's been on your mind, And that being said, guys, thank you. Thank you for hanging out with me. Thank you for being so patient with me. Please know that you can reach out with any thoughts or ideas or questions or, prayer requests, whatever it is. I would love to hear what you have to say. So your verses, though, we can't forget about that. Your verses of the day. And yes, I said verses. That's right. 2. The first one is Numbers 32, verses 20 through 23. And the second one is Revelation chapter 22, verse 7. That's it, guys. This is Brianna signing off, saying God bless.